Minasai dressed up carefully and smiled gently, but it was not for herself. She was going on a blind date in place of her wealthy best friend. For the role, she forced her feet into a pair of ill-fitting high heels, grabbed a small handbag, and prepared to leave. Before heading out, the two friends even devised a battle plan. No matter what, Minasai must make sure the date ended in failure. On the way, however, an accident occurred. Minasai witnessed it and rushed to help. She quickly took off her scarf to stop a child's bleeding, and at that moment, standing in the sunlight, she looked radiant. By chance, Do-hyun, the man she was meant to meet, saw the scene. He was captivated by her immediately, though she didn't know it yet. Minasai soon arrived at the upscale restaurant, anxious about the task ahead. Do-hyun, surprised and delighted, realized his blind date was the same girl he had seen saving a child earlier. Like an excited child, he couldn't hide his happiness. Minasai, however, reminded herself of her mission. She ordered a large beer while Do-hyun politely asked for coffee, then gulped down her drink without a care for appearances. She thought this would drive him away, but to her shock, Do-hyun joined in, drinking straight from the bottle and even praising the brand. When that failed, Minasai raised harsh conditions. After marriage, she would not do housework and she refused to have children. To her surprise, Do-hyun calmly agreed to everything. Determined not to give up, she tried her second trick. She brought him to a dirty, messy eatery filled with stray cats and smelly food. Sitting across from him, she ate heartily, convinced the wealthy young master would be disgusted. Yet Do-hyun only smiled, ate with even more appetite than her, and remarked that he had endured far worse. Frustrated, Minasai moved on to her third trick, pretending to be a spendthrift. She dragged him to a luxury store, picked up a handbag, and was stunned by the outrageous price. Do-hyun gently told her not to worry about money and encouraged her to buy whatever she liked. But Minasai couldn't bring herself to do it. Instead, she put it back and chose something cheaper. Noticing her painful shoes, Do-hyun bought her a thoughtful gift. With that, her plan to sabotage the date ended in complete failure. Later, when Minasai reported back, her best friend was furious. But when they opened Do-hyun's gift, they discovered a pair of shoes that fit Minasai perfectly. Her friend grew suspicious. How did he know Minasai's size? She angrily labeled him a stalker. Back home, Minasai gently touched the shoes. She had never owned anything so fine. Usually, she wore only one old, worn pair, and she didn't dare use these new ones. Instead, she carefully placed them on the shelf. The truth was, Minasai had recently earned the chance to study abroad, but the enormous cost of the plane ticket was far beyond her means. That was why she had agreed to replace her friend on the blind date. Her reward would be a ticket overseas. The next day, as Minasai crossed the street, she nearly got hit by a speeding electric bike. Do-hyun pulled her back just in time. Their eyes met, and sparks seemed to fly between them. Embarrassed, Minasai pushed him away and rushed onto a bus. But Do-hyun followed her on, determined not to let her go. Even the bus conductor, noticing their awkwardness, teased them like a pair of shy lovers. Soon after, they met again at an upscale restaurant. Minasai, unfamiliar with Western dining, was flustered by the unfamiliar knives and forks. Seeing her discomfort, Do-hyun told the waiter that he too didn't know how to use them, asking for help. In that simple gesture, he eased her embarrassment. But just then, one of Minasai's annoying co-workers from the hospital appeared at the same restaurant. If he recognized her, her secret would be revealed. Minasai tried to hide behind the menu. Do-hyun, though unsure of the reason, noticed her unease and boldly approached the man with a drink, deliberately spilling it. The man was furious, and Minasai, afraid of being discovered, fled the scene. Her shoes betrayed her once again. She twisted her ankle on the stairs. After calming the angry man, Do-hyun rushed after her. Seeing her pain, he lifted her without hesitation. Minasai, unwilling to go to the hospital because she worked as a nurse and feared being exposed, refused treatment. Instead, Do-hyun carried her to the riverside, carefully bandaged her ankle, and even slipped soft slippers onto her feet. Sitting by the water, they quietly enjoyed the peaceful moment together. Minasai felt her heart beginning to waver, but deep down, she knew the truth could not remain hidden forever. The very next day, Do-hyun arrived at her best friend's house. The secret of the swapped blind date was about to be exposed. The three of them stood face to face, and Min Si realized that the fragile balance was about to collapse. When the truth came out, Do Hyun realized he had been deceived by his blind date. Standing before him were two women who had tricked him. Yet instead of exposing them on the spot, he calmly requested that the charade continue. Min Si's friend, puzzled, asked why he would accept such a lie. Do Hyun clutched a photo of the woman who had captured his heart and answered simply, because he had already fallen for her, Min Si, the stand-in who was never meant to be there. Her friend grew furious. Out of pride, she warned Do Hyun not to harbor any thoughts about Min Si, revealing that Min Si had only agreed to go on the blind date in exchange for a plane ticket. She insisted that Min Si didn't actually like him at all. Upstairs, Min Si overheard everything, staring down silently. Later, her friend, worried that she might have spoken too hastily, timidly asked Min Si, "Do you like him?" Min Si denied it, but her flushed face betrayed the truth, her heart racing uncontrollably. When she finally came downstairs, Do Hyun took her hand firmly and refused to let go. Only when others appeared did he finally release her, but before leaving, he slipped her a small note, asking her to meet him that evening. Back home, Min Si unfolded the note and hesitated, torn about whether she should go. Her younger brother teased her mercilessly, describing her expression in a way that was all too accurate. In the end, she went to the restaurant as asked. Sitting across from Do Hyun, she told him directly that she wasn't worthy of him. Do Hyun only smiled and reassured her. His sincerity moved Min Si, yet she still carried her own burdens and hesitated to open up. Just then her landlord's daughter appeared, skipping class. Infatuated with Do Hyun's good looks, she tried to strike up a conversation, until she noticed Min Si was there. Fearing Min Si might tell her father, she quickly fled. Her sudden intrusion broke the heavy atmosphere, and Min Si offered to walk the girl home. Before leaving, however, Do Hyun quietly asked the girl for her phone number, leaving Min Si feeling uneasy. The following day, after much thought, Min Si agreed to meet Do Hyun again. She wanted to say what she hadn't managed to the day before. She thanked him for giving her such beautiful memories and suggested that if they must give this relationship a deadline, then let it remain just that, a fleeting but precious experience. They shook hands and said goodbye, though Min Si still felt reluctant as she glanced at the small coin he had once given her for a taxi fare. But Do Hyun wasn't ready to let her go. Using the landlord's daughter as a connection, he managed to track down where Min Si lived. No matter how she resisted, he wouldn't back down. To get closer to her, this wealthy heir even offered to tutor the landlord's daughter. That night, her landlord invited him to drink and deliberately left him to stay over. True to form, Do Hyun didn't waste the chance. He sat in the courtyard under the stars, playing the guitar loudly enough for Min Si to hear. Finally, he confessed boldly, he liked her, and he would continue liking her no matter what. Min Si blushed deeply, her heart pounding as she listened to his voice. Memories of everything they had shared flooded back, and though she said nothing, her silence spoke volumes. The next day, she submitted her resignation, her bright smile hinting at the choice she had made. Soon after, the two of them visited an orphanage together. Do Hyun, despite being trained as a doctor, was initially reluctant to help with the children's checkups. But Min Si's insistence left him no choice, and he patiently examined each child one by one. Then, a little boy appeared, staring hungrily at the bread in Do Hyun's hands. Without hesitation, Do Hyun split it and gave half to the child. Not long after, Do Hyun rushed in carrying that same child, now sweating heavily and looking unwell. Panic was written all over his face, so unlike the calm doctor he was supposed to be. Min Si quickly reassured him. The girl was only suffering from acute gastroenteritis brought on by hunger, and she would recover soon. She gently asked why he had been so shaken. That was when Do Hyun revealed the truth. He had always treated patients whose circumstances made it difficult for them to go to a hospital, and some painful memories had left scars in his heart. There had been a time when Do Hyun failed to save a critically ill patient. That loss haunted him, leaving him trapped in guilt and self-blame. Hearing his story, Min Si patiently comforted him, though she wasn't sure if her words could untie the knot in his heart. She knew that unless he overcame this burden, he would never truly be able to move forward as a doctor. After they returned from the orphanage, Do-hyun was still waiting for Min-esai's answer about their relationship, but she only asked him to wait one more day. The next morning, he came with a painting in hand, filled with anticipation. Yet when Min-esai finally spoke, her answer was cold and distant. She told him that he should get engaged to her best friend, Soo-rain. Do-hyun was stunned. He could see sorrow written all over Min-esai's face, but he didn't understand why she was pushing him away when her heart clearly told a different story. What he didn't know was that, before meeting him, Min-esai had been stopped by her best friend. Soo-rain had tearfully begged her to step aside, confessing that her engagement to Do-hyun had always been part of a larger family alliance. Worse, Do-hyun's powerful father held leverage over Soo-rain. He had discovered her weakness, and if she didn't go through with the marriage, her family would suffer the consequences. Min-esai realized that her own selfishness, agreeing to attend the blind date in Soo-rain's place, had led to this painful mess. Now she couldn't bring herself to fight for her own happiness. Even though her heart ached, she told Do-hyun to marry Soo-rain, not wanting her friend to lose face or her beloved man to suffer at his father's hands. Do-hyun, however, could not accept her coldness. In frustration, he stormed to Soo-rain's house the next day and rashly agreed to the engagement. Even Soo-rain was shocked by his decision. Meanwhile, Min-esai endured the heartbreak in silence, preparing her documents for studying abroad. On her way to the office, she unexpectedly ran into her cousin, who had secretly loved her since childhood. He kindly offered her a simple egg to eat, and the small gesture triggered bittersweet memories of her moments with Do-hyun. Later, at the department store, Min-esai's cousin tried to buy her a gift, but the air between them was painfully awkward. It became worse when she spotted Do-hyun and Soo-rain nearby, shopping for their engagement attire. In that cramped little store, the four of them stood together, the tension unbearable. Only Min-esai's cousin, blissfully unaware of the truth, remained ignorant of the painful undercurrents. Jealousy overwhelmed Do-hyun when he later saw Min-esai again. He could no longer suppress his emotions and lashed out, pouring out all the frustration and longing he had bottled inside. Yet despite his anger, Min-esai still chose to endure in silence. On the day of the engagement banquet, Min-esai could only watch as her beloved man walked out hand in hand with her best friend. Each step they took together was like a knife twisting in her heart. When the couple bowed before the guests, the room erupted in applause, except for Min-esai, who sat frozen in a daze. That night, Do-hyun wandered the garden alone, smoking in solitude. When he saw Min-esai, he noticed something that shook him. She wasn't wearing the shoes her cousin had given her, but the very first gift he had ever bought for her. Tears welled in his eyes as he gazed at her, and at last, Min-esai could no longer hold back her feelings. With tears streaming down her face, she confessed the truth she had buried for so long. In that instant, Do-hyun made a reckless decision. He grabbed Min-esai's hand and dragged her away, running out of the engagement banquet together. They escaped to a quiet place. There, Do-hyun gently cupped Min-esai's face, and the two gazed into each other's eyes, finally exchanging tokens of love. But as they leaned closer, Min-esai pulled away in embarrassment, hurrying back home. Left alone, Do-hyun held her earring in his palm, smiling as he relived the sweetness of their stolen moment. What he didn't know was that Soo-rain had seen everything from the window. Yet instead of anger, she chose to cover for him in front of her family. Deep down, she knew the truth. Do-hyun and Min-esai were the ones who truly loved each other, and this tragedy was partly her own making. But no matter how hard she tried to hide it, there was one person who could not be fooled: Do-hyun's father. Do-hyun's father was no ordinary man. He was a powerful figure in the Military Intelligence Bureau, a man whose sharp eyes missed nothing. The next morning, Do-hyun sat at the table staring at the earring Min-esai had given him. Just then, his father entered the room, shut the door, and locked it behind him. For the first time, Do-hyun stood his ground, his eyes filled with defiance. His father, however, only gave a cold, knowing smile. "Son," he said, "being the heir of a chaebol family isn't as easy as you think." The tense atmosphere was broken only when Soo-rain came by for a visit. Even she, though not truly fond of Do-hyun, was shaken when she noticed the bruise around his eye and realized how intimidating her future father-in-law was. She didn't love Do-hyun, but in front of others she still played the role of the dutiful fiancé. Do-hyun, on the surface, brushed it off with bravado, but deep down he could not hide his unease. The following day, Soo-ryan's elder brother called Do-hyun, inviting him out for drinks. At first, Do-hyun tried to decline, worried that something might be exposed, but the brother insisted it was just casual conversation. Reluctantly, Do-hyun agreed. Over drinks, Soo-ryan's brother was cheerful and lighthearted until he brought up the engagement banquet. Suddenly, his face darkened. His tone turned sharp as he questioned Do-hyun about why he had disappeared that night. It turned out he, too, had seen Do-hyun and Min-si eloping together. He warned Do-hyun to leave Min-si at once, telling him to stop before it was too late. But Do-hyun only smiled faintly. He knew the brother's anger came from more than family honor. He also harbored feelings for Min-si. Calmly, Do-hyun turned the question back on him. "Did you really ask me here just for Soo-ryan's sake?" The words struck a nerve, leaving the brother momentarily speechless. Still unwilling to give up, the brother later intercepted Min-si on her way home. He urged her to leave Do-hyun, laying out all the dangers and consequences. But this time, Min-si did not waver. For the first time in her life, she stood firm in her decision. She confessed to herself that in her student years, she had made mistakes. Once, she was framed and spent time in detention, which forced her to leave high school before graduating. That shadow had haunted her for years, leaving her passive, timid, and always accommodating others without protest. She had never dared to assert herself. But now, she had finally found the courage to fight for her love with Do-hyun. Defeated, Soo-ryan's brother drowned his sorrows in a bar. He drank heavily, and in his drunkenness, even blurted out his true feelings in front of his own sister. His dangerous obsession, left unchecked, was like a time bomb waiting to explode. Meanwhile, Min-si and Do-hyun continued to meet in secret. They arranged to see each other at the train station, where their love grew stronger. They spent entire days together, eating in restaurants, studying side by side in the library, and walking through the streets with laughter and warmth. At the end of a beautiful day, Do-hyun walked Min-si back, his gaze lingering on her until she disappeared around the corner. Neither of them knew that as she made her way home, still glowing from their happiness, fate had already prepared another cruel test. On her way home, Min-si was suddenly seized. A sack was thrown over her head, and before she could even react, 2 men dragged her away. When the bag was finally pulled from her head, Min-si trembled in fear. She assumed these men were robbers, and cautiously tried to probe them, hoping to buy her way out of danger. But the men only laughed. Something felt wrong. Looking around, she realized this was no hideout. It was a fully equipped interrogation room. Her suspicion was confirmed when the men revealed their identities without hesitation. Min-si's fear gave way to anger. She had committed no crime. Why should she be dragged here like a criminal? Was this justice, or simply banditry in uniform? She snapped back, questioning them fiercely. Her defiance was met with a brutal blow, and everything went dark. The next morning, Min-si slowly awoke when a hand brushed her bangs from her face. Blinking, she recognized the man standing before her. A memory from the engagement banquet flashed in her mind. It was him, Do-hyun's father. He calmly informed her that her passport application had been revoked. To Min-si, this was worse than death. She had worked tirelessly for 10 years to overcome the stain of her student years, when she had been framed and expelled from school. Finally, she had earned the chance to study abroad, but now it had been taken from her on false charges. Devastated, she demanded to know why. Do-hyun's father only smiled, saying nothing, but the meaning was clear enough. In their country, men like him, those with power and status, could bend the law at will. Ordinary people like Min-si could only submit. Released at last, Min-si sat alone on the steps outside her friend's elder brother's company. She hoped he might help her find a way to restore her passport, but the news was hopeless. What she did not realize was that this man was the very one who had set the chain of events in motion. He too loved Min-si. On the night of the engagement banquet, when he saw Do-hyun standing by his sister's side while secretly loving Min-si, His heart turned bitter. Out of jealousy, he had revealed their secret to Do-hyun's father. At first, he thought this would only lead to the engagement being broken off, giving him a chance. But he had underestimated how ruthless Do-hyun's father could be. At the confrontation, Do-hyun's father demanded Soo Ryan speak the truth. Terrified, she shook her head and claimed ignorance. That single denial sealed Min-sai's fate, pushing her into an abyss. Do-hyun's father later pretended to admit his own fault, saying he had failed to discipline his son properly and would resolve the matter quickly. In truth, he had no intention of letting this marriage alliance, so crucial to his interests, fall apart. The next day, Do-hyun went looking for Min-sai. But she wasn't at home. At her workplace, he learned she hadn't shown up, a first for her. His worry grew. When the police told him that a missing adult case couldn't be filed until 72 hours had passed, his anxiety deepened. He refused to wait. Through Min-sai's younger brother, he tracked down her family home in the countryside. Her parents welcomed him and even invited him to share a meal, but Min-sai was nowhere to be found. Just as he was about to leave in despair, she appeared at last. But she was changed, haggard, her face drawn with exhaustion. When she saw Do-hyun rushing toward her, instead of joy, fear flickered in her eyes. She even took a step back. When he tried to take her hand, she pulled away violently and left without looking back. Though Do-hyun wanted desperately to know what had happened, he restrained himself. He could see her heart was heavy, and so he waited for her at the station. Yet when Min-sai spotted him again, she pretended not to see, walking past as if he were a stranger. He followed, his emotions raw, pleading for answers. But the response he received left him utterly shaken. Later, back at home, Min-sai curled up in a corner, crying silently. Her withdrawal was not only because she had lost her chance to study abroad. More than that, it was because of the threat that still echoed in her ears. In the interrogation room, Do-hyun's father had told her coldly, "If you continue to be with my son, I will destroy his future along with yours." Even when it came to his own son, Do-hyun's father would never show mercy. Those words pierced Min-sai's softest spot. She was the kind of person who would rather suffer herself than burden others, especially the one she loved. After returning home, Do-hyun came up with a foolish plan. He pretended to be carefree, laughing and joking with his father, hoping to smooth things over. But he forgot who his father was. Such little tricks could never fool him. Instead, he ordered Do-hyun to leave the city. In desperation, Do-hyun knelt before him, begging him to spare Min-sai, but even so, it was all in vain. With no other choice, Do-hyun went to say goodbye to Min-sai, hoping they could both live their lives in peace. At the moment of parting, he wished so much that Min-sai would look back at him just once. But all he got in return was the cold sound of a door shutting. Soon after, Do-hyun left with someone he didn't love, moving to another city. Yet every time he saw a bus ticket on the ground, or heard a familiar song in a taxi, memories of his days with Min-sai came flooding back. As for Min-sai, she spent her days at the church, trying to release her pain in prayer. Even her guilty older brother, wanting to make up for his mistakes, handed over his entire fortune just to secure her a chance to study abroad again. But even then, she couldn't bring herself to be happy. Her best friend finally broke under the weight of her guilt. She revealed to Do-hyun the real reason Min-sai had chosen to run away, and urged him to go back to her. But Do-hyun refused. He knew that if he went to find Min-sai again, it would only bring more pain. His father's shadow was a wall he could never cross. Yet, not long after, Do-hyun couldn't hold back anymore. He and Min-sai met again at that familiar street corner. Tears welled up in their eyes. Perhaps even if they were destined to be hurt again, it would still be better than a lifetime of regret. Then chaos broke out. They stumbled into a group of soldiers who were attacking people at random. Terrified, Min-sai bolted from the car, only to be grabbed by soldiers waiting outside. She struggled desperately but was shoved hard to the ground. Just as the soldier raised his weapon, Do-hyun arrived in time, blocking the heavy blow with his own head. A fight broke out between him and the soldier, but he was clearly no match. In that moment, courage surged in Min-sai. She seized a wooden stick from the ground and struck the soldier with all her strength. At last, they managed to escape, running into a narrow alley where they planned how to leave the city. But when Min Si saw blood streaming down Do Hyun's forehead, she insisted on taking him to the hospital first. It was already late, gunshots and chaos erupting outside, so they had no choice but to spend the night there, planning to leave the next morning. But when Do Hyun woke the next day, Min Si was gone. Checking his watch, he realized it was already the time they had agreed to depart. He rushed out into the hallways, only to find them packed with the wounded. Finally, he spotted Min Si, dressed in her nurse's uniform, tending to the injured. Anger flared in Do Hyun's chest. Min Si had broken their promise, and they quarreled. At that moment, one of Min Si's colleagues shoved a white coat into Do Hyun's hands, begging him to help. She knew Do Hyun had studied medicine, even if he had never worked a single day as a real doctor. Do Hyun wanted to refuse, but Min Si's determined gaze left him no choice. Reluctantly, he put on the coat. Thrown into the chaos, Do Hyun struggled to keep up, terrified he wasn't capable enough. But his colleague reassured him, even an intern was better than nothing. So, he pressed on, tending to patients as best he could. Soon after, a wave of people wounded by stabbings was rushed into the hospital. No one could believe the army had turned its weapons on civilians. But it was true, the military had received intelligence that a spy was hiding in the city. Acting on the principle of, better to kill the wrong person than let one escape, they marched in. As the conflict escalated, it wasn't just strangers who suffered. Teachers, principals, even high school students, once caught, none could escape brutal treatment. As more and more patients arrived with severe injuries, the inexperienced Do Hyun made a mistake in front of everyone. He allowed a critical patient to cut ahead in line for surgery. This instantly enraged the families who had been waiting patiently, and chaos nearly broke out. It wasn't until a colleague intervened that the situation calmed down. Do Hyun was left shaken and overwhelmed. He didn't understand, he hadn't been wrong, so why was he being treated this way? With frustration and sadness weighing on him, he quietly slipped out alone. But just as he was about to step outside for some fresh air, he spotted a female student collapsed in the hallway. Panicking, he rushed over, but no matter how loudly he called, the girl didn't respond. Placing his fingers against her neck, Do Hyun realized her pulse was faint, frighteningly similar to a trauma patient he had once failed to save. That failure had left a scar on his heart, and now fear gripped him again. He squeezed his eyes shut, unable to look. But the girl's life was slipping away before his eyes. Finally, Do Hyun broke through his fear. Again and again he pressed down, sweat pouring from his brow, refusing to stop. At last, the girl's lips trembled faintly, a sign of life. Later, Min Si told him that without his immediate intervention, the girl never would have survived. In that moment, Do Hyun truly felt the sacred responsibility of being a doctor. More importantly, he had finally overcome the shadow of his past failure. That evening, as the clock struck 7, they prepared to leave. But to Min Si's surprise, Do Hyun announced he wanted to stay at the hospital. Min Si said nothing. She simply held his hand, gazed at him, and smiled softly in approval. The next day, however, everything changed. The very first patient brought in had a gunshot wound. Shockingly, the soldiers, the very army that was supposed to protect them, had turned their weapons on their own people. Events had spiraled this far out of control. Amidst the chaos, Do Hyun was injured, and the only refuge left for them was a church. But even there, under the brutality of the military, was anywhere truly safe? It was inside this church that a special wedding took place. There were no flowers, not even a proper ring. Yet for Do Hyun and Min Si, it was enough. After enduring so much hardship, they finally reached this moment. But just as Min Si was about to read her wedding vows, the pastor rushed in with devastating news. Villagers had just brought in the body of her father. In the blink of an eye, what should have been a joyous wedding turned into a heart-wrenching funeral. The truth was that the night before, Min Si's father had tried to cross the blockade with her younger brother. When they were discovered, he pried his son's hand away and stepped forward, sacrificing himself as a decoy. His only possessions left behind were a savings book and a handwritten letter. When Min Si read the letter, tears blurred her vision. She finally understood. Her father had always carried guilt for the mistakes that had cost her education. Every cent she had ever sent home, he never touched. Instead, he saved it all, hoping she could one day study abroad again. He hadn't expected forgiveness, only wishing to silently shield her like a barrier against the storm. Remembering her father's figure disappearing into the distance each time he left, Minasai broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. Later, she stepped outside for only a short while. When she returned, her little brother, who had just awakened in the morning hall, lonely and confused, he had asked someone for a map, intending to cross the blockade by himself to find their mother. When Do-hyun and Minasai discovered his absence, they had no choice but to risk everything to search for him. At a crossroads, they split up to cover more ground, a decision Do-hyun would regret for the rest of his life. Minasai eventually found her brother in the woods, but soldiers were already closing in. They hid behind a boulder, watching as the patrol drew nearer. In that desperate moment, Minasai thought of her father. She tied her brother's shoelaces tightly, whispered for him to run, and then raised her hands to surrender. But fate was cruel. A soldier spotted her brother trying to escape and, without hesitation, raised his gun. And so, in the spring of May, Minasai's youth came to an end. She closed her eyes and left this world forever. Not long after, martial law was finally lifted. Do-hyun, carrying stacks of missing person posters, searched everywhere for Minasai. He searched not for days or months, but for 41 long years. By then, he had grown old and frail. At last, at a construction site, Minasai's remains were uncovered. Her only belongings were her father's pocket watch and the wedding vows she never had the chance to read. Do-hyun wrote a final letter, a reply addressed to heaven, and placed it gently on Minasai's grave. With that, the story comes to an end. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and drop a heart if you love the story.